Hello everyone, thanking you for supporting. Thanks to you I am close to 1000 subscribers. Please to continue on supporting, like and comment on my videos today. As a thanks for helping reach 1000 subscribers, I will put the next chapter of What If Naruto Was in High School DxD. It will be the complete chapter. I hope you like it. Warning from here out, some chapters may have adult content, for example female body description, and well, some XXX content. You have been warned. Chapter 3 Contracts. As morning came, Naruto found himself waking up to a strangely warm and familiar feeling. It wasn't one he had felt often. In fact, he could count the number of times he felt this way on one hand. And one of those times he felt this way, he was too busy trying to figure out why he wasn't dead to notice the feeling until well after he was awake. That was not the case now. With no injuries making his mind turn elsewhere and having had a good night's rest, Naruto was perfectly aware of the naked female body lying next to him on the bed. Or rather, the naked female body that was snuggled directly into his side. Looking to his left and down, the first thing he saw was red hair fanned out across his body, with the sunlight streaming through his window, hitting her hair just so. It made the long red tresses look like crystallized flames. Naruto was not one to wax poetic, but it was easily the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The second thing he saw was Rias as she slept on peacefully, blissfully unaware that he had woken up. The covers had been pulled down to their waist, exposing her enviable bust for his eyes to see. She turned slightly on her side, facing him, and was using his shoulder as a pillow. Naruto could feel every inch of her bountiful curves as they pressed into him, as they were pulled flush against him. He did not have much experience with women, but he did have some. Contrary to popular belief back home, he wasn't completely inept when it came to the opposite sex. He'd had Jiraiya as a teacher. For God's sake, you didn't come back from a 3-year training trip with the world's biggest pervert and not pick some things up. And Sakura always said he was dense. Huh? Who's dense now? Not him. No, sorry, he wasn't dense in the slightest. Well, maybe he was just a little dense. Just a bit. Anyways, those few women he had previous sexual encounters with were all put to shame by the beauty lying against him. He really didn't think there was another creature that could possibly be as beautiful as this girl right here. Of course, these were all secondary thoughts. Things he noted with interest but was not really concerned with. There was only one thing he currently wanted to know. How had she gotten in? That was the first thing Naruto wanted to know. He had a ton of traps set up all around his apartment, especially by the windows and the front door. They only ever came down when he needed to leave and came back up immediately after he left, and he had made sure she had not seen how his traps worked when they left for school the other day. So how had she managed to get into his bedroom? Was there some kind of method of breaking and entering people's bedrooms that devils had that could bypass all his defenses? Not that Naruto was actually complaining, mind you. While not as bad as, say, Issei, Naruto was still a healthy male, and he had Jiraiya as his sensei. Even if Naruto did not follow in his godfather's footsteps of peeping on women, he still had a larger than average libido. He was just better at not showing it and had more respect for women than either Jiraiya or Issei did. That's what happened when you had Hiruno Sakura as a teammate and Senju Tsunade as a mother figure. You gained a healthy amount of respect and fear of women. Having Shizune as an older sister figure probably hadn't helped either. Damn, that was a lot of women who hated perverts in his life. Good thing he had Kakashi and Jiraiya to offset those women's influence. Shaking his head, Naruto dispelled those nonsensical thoughts. None of them helped him with his current problem, namely, what should he do now? It was morning, so technically speaking, he should probably get up and get started on breakfast, or maybe even take a shower before Rias woke up so that she could use it after him. At the same time, Naruto glanced down at the girl using him as a pillow. His arm was wrapped loosely around her thin waist, his hand resting on the middle of her back, pulling her closer. He could feel her body pressed against his. Her bare breasts felt magnificent against his torso, and one of her legs had hooked itself around his right leg sometime during the night. The silky smoothness of her skin brought an almost intolerable pleasure, causing shivers to run down his spine. Her hair was splayed out across his chest, draping him in a crimson curtain of velvety satin. She hadn't done that the last time she slept with him. At least he was sure she had not done this last time. Then again, his mind had not been all there when he first woke up. For all he knew, She could have been this close and he just pushed her off when he sat up. Hadn't she told him that healing him had required them to have as much skin contact as possible? Makes you wonder why she was here now. As much as he knew he should probably get breakfast started or something, he really didn't want to leave the comfortable warmth that having a beautiful girl sleeping with him brought. And so, Naruto decided to relax. If he was late for school, so be it. He was far too comfortable to move right now. And he didn't really care about school, so it was a win-win situation in his book. As he let his mind wander to nonsensical thoughts like what kind of ramen should I have for lunch today, and I wonder if Sakura managed to pull that stick out of Sasuke's ass yet. His hand began to absently rub up and down wrist, torso and hips. This action caused the girl snuggled against him to begin stirring. As a soft yawn escaped from the red-haired, greenish blue-eyed girl's mouth, Naruto looked down to see Rias lifting her head from his shoulder and blinking several times as she found him staring at her. "Good morning, Naruto-kun," Rias mumbled, smiling a bit. Naruto returned the smile with one of his own. "Good morning, Rias. I'm kind of surprised to see you today," he frowned, turning his head a bit so that she would not see the expression on his face. "I kinda expected you to still be with Issei." He tried not to show it, but it bothered him to think of her with Issei. He still wasn't jealous though, just concerned. "You know, since you healed him last night and all." Rias pushed herself into a sitting position, once again heedless of her own nudity. Naruto found his eyes unconsciously traveling towards her breasts as they bounced and jiggled with each movement made. They were very perky despite their size. No sag at all. Even though they were quite large, it looked like they didn't even need a bra to stay uplifted. Her pink nipples and areola looked very enticing right now. At that moment, he wanted nothing more than to take those pert nipples in his mouth and suckle on them. And did he really just think that? Damn that Jiraiya. Even in death, his corruption ran deep. Naruto supposed he should just be glad he didn't end up like Issei. He could only imagine the trouble he would have gotten in had he been like that kid. He shuddered at the thought of all the beatings he would have received from Sakura and Tsunade. "I thought about it," Rias replied to his unasked question. Her words also had the effect of knocking him out of his small moment of perversion and caused him to look her in the eye. "But I decided against it. While Issei's reaction to my presence would have been amusing, I felt it might be a bit too much if I were to appear naked in his bed." "Is that so?" Naruto released a breath he did not know he had been holding. Something Rias immediately noticed and latched onto. "Why do you ask?" There was an innocent smile on her face that Naruto felt really did not belong there. It was far too innocent to be real. No real reason, I guess." Naruto mumbled a bit. He felt strangely vulnerable under that gaze. "Just a bit worried about my new friend." When Rias merely continued smiling, Naruto felt an inexplicable urge to explain himself. "It's just that I know perverts very well. My old sensei was the biggest pervert I've ever met, so I know how they work. If you were to show up in Issei's bed, naked, he may try to take advantage of you." Rias hummed thoughtfully, but still didn't say anything. For some reason, it was making Naruto a bit self-conscious. "So, why did you decide to come here and not simply head back home?" he asked, simply for lack of having anything better to say. Rias tilted her head, the smile still on her face. "I just wanted to become closer to my cute new servant. Nothing more. That's the only reason." "Yep. So, you do this to be closer to your servants?" Naruto mumbled before looking back at Rias. "Does that mean you've done this with Yuto, Kaneko and Akino as well?" "Well, no." Rias shook his head. "But Yuto's not really the type to enjoy this sort of thing. And Akino and Kaneko-chan aren't really into this either." Although, the red-haired beauty looked immensely thoughtful as she seemed to remember something. "I have occasionally slept with Akino. We are best friends after all, so it's only natural I see." He really didn't, but said that for lack of having anything of substance to say. "Anyways, you should probably take a shower and get dressed while I make breakfast." A smile crept onto Ria's face, causing Naruto to deadpan. "That's why you're here, isn't it? So I can cook for you?" "Of course not." Rias smiled indulgently. "That's just a bonus." "Whatever." Naruto sighed. "Just take a shower." Rias sighed softly as she stood in the shower. Steaming hot droplets of water ran down her gorgeous body, coasting over her slender shoulders, climbing across the two large mounds on her chest and making adventurous trips through the valley of her breasts. They ran down her smooth, flat stomach and followed the small, trimmed patch of red hair before roving across the valley of her lips and, finally, falling off to join the thousands of other drops of water on the shower floor while other droplets ran the longer course across her beautifully shaped thighs and calves, as she finally decided to pick up the bar of soap and wash herself. On a side note, Naruto had good taste in soap. Her mind wandered towards one of her newest servants, namely, the blonde one whose apartment she was currently in. She had not been lying when she said that her reason for not still being with Issei was because she thought waking him up to a naked woman might be a bit much. As funny as his reaction would be, she didn't want him to be distracted from what she would eventually need to tell him, and if he was thinking about her breasts, he would be distracted. But there had been another reason for her to come to Naruto, and it was not just because he had actually made a very good breakfast last time. There was something strange about Naruto or the circumstances that led to him being here. He showed up at her school exactly 1 month ago, and exactly 1 month ago her brother had given her a very special mutated piece. Something so rare only every 1 in 100 devils had one. There was simply no way these two incidents were not connected. Her brother knew that Naruto would be going to her school and knew that there was something special about him. Rias wanted to find out what, and since she had not been able to get in contact with her brother, he was likely doing something stupid again. She would have to figure out why Naruto was so special by spending time with him and learning more about him. That was why she had decided to come over to his house. Why she spent so much time with him. What's more, the mutated piece she had used looked nothing like the other ones she had seen. Her brother had a few of them, so she knew what they looked like. They always still carried the general shape of what they once were. The mutated piece he gave her looked nothing like a standard chess piece. It wasn't a pawn, nor a rook, knight, bishop or queen. It wasn't a king either. It was none of those things. That intrigued her as well. There must be something truly special about Naruto if the only evil piece that worked for him was this unique mutated piece that she had never seen before. That it wasn't considered a standard evil piece, and therefore meant she still had her bishop, knight and rook pieces was the icing on the proverbial cake. Stepping out of the shower, Rias began the long, arduous process of drying herself off. Most of the drying was simply her hair, which she had a lot of. It had been suggested that she cut it before, but Rias rather liked her hair and wouldn't hear anything of it. Besides, Naruto complimented her hair. For some reason that made her feel it was special. After getting dressed in her school uniform, the young grammary heiress made her way into the kitchen. It wasn't actually what she would call a kitchen, more of a small place to cook combined with a moderately sized living room. The kitchen was incredibly tiny and only separated from the rest of the room by the floor changing from carpet to tile. Naruto was standing over the stove, making breakfast. She didn't know what it was, but it smelled pretty good. Deciding to see what he was making, she walked directly behind him, pressed her chest against his back and placed her chin on his shoulder as she looked over him to the pan. "What are you making? Just scrambled eggs?" Naruto did not seem all that surprised by her sudden action. It made her rather curious. Most people would have at least been surprised. Most men would have gotten a nosebleed or at least a blush with how she was pressing her breasts against his back. Naruto? He acted as if he knew what she was going to do before she had even done it. "However, I decided to add some whole milk, cheddar cheese and chopped vegetables to it," he continued, heedless of her inner thoughts. "I never used to like vegetables back when I was younger, but my godfather showed me that if I cook them in something, then I can make it so that I don't taste them while I eat. That's certainly an interesting way of making sure you eat healthy," Rias commented airily as she filed something more important away. His mention of having a godfather. "I thought you didn't have a family." "I don't." Naruto paused. It was only for a moment, but Rias noticed the hitch in his voice enough to realize what she had just said. "Sorry," she mumbled softly. With guilt setting in, Rias wrapped her arms around his torso, hugging him from behind. "I didn't mean to bring that up again. It's fine." Naruto blew out a deep breath. She turned her head slightly to look at him from out of the corner of her eye and saw him looking back with a very small, understanding smile. "You're curious. I get that. I don't blame you for that, and I really don't mind telling you a little about myself." Her response to his words was to tighten her hold on him. "I hadn't even met my godfather until I turned 12, Naruto informed her. Because he had a very important job that was too dangerous for him to take me with. He had to leave me in the village. Of course, I didn't even know he was my godfather until after he had been killed. He had never mentioned that to me. I'm still a little pissed at him for that. Killed. Riss was surprised by how startled she sounded. Or maybe not. Hearing the words from her newest peerage member's lips was shocking. To think that one of her servants had both his parents and godfather killed so early in his life. She could only imagine how he must feel. Riss didn't know if she would have been able to go on if her parents or brother died. Yeah, he was killed by a former student of his, Naruto said solemnly. A man by the name of Nagato. I confronted my fellow apprentice several weeks after Ero Senin's death and we managed to reach an understanding. I still haven't forgiven him, the blonde added as an afterthought. But at the same time, I know that Ero Senin would be disappointed in me if I walk down the path of revenge. So even though he killed our sensei, I won't allow myself to hate him. I see. Riss grew silent as she contemplated the blonde's words. She had already noticed it by now despite the short time she had known him. But Naruto, in spite of that happy-go-lucky attitude of his, was incredibly mature for someone his age. In some ways, his thoughts and maturity reminded her of her brother. When her brother wasn't being stupid at least. The crimson-haired devil wondered what he must have gone through to gain such maturity for someone so young. She also hoped against all hope that he did not act as stupid as her brother sometimes did. Breakfast is just about done. Naruto's voice snapped Riss out of her thoughts. You should go sit down. I'll bring it out to you in just a minute. Okay. Riss decided to do as asked. She unwrapped her arms from his torso and walked over to the small table where she sat down. She watched as Naruto went about getting 2 plates and some silverware. He placed the scrambled eggs on the plates and walked over to place one of them in front of her while the other was set on the opposite side of the table. Would you like anything to drink? Riss scrunched up her nose in thought. Milk is fine. Or orange juice, if you have any. I definitely have orange juice. Naruto grinned as he got 2 glasses from the cabinet and a pitcher of orange juice from the fridge. With a name like that, how could I not? Riss giggled as the blonde brought the glasses of orange juice to the table. I guess the color orange really is your favorite, she commented lightly as he put the glass in front of her. Breakfast was actually kind of pleasant. They didn't really talk much, but that was okay with Riss as it gave her time to digest and think over the bits of information she had learned about the young man who had joined her peerage. He was a very open and friendly person. Even when she mentioned things that clearly still hurt to think about, he didn't get mad and answered all of her questions. She didn't doubt for 1 minute that he was being honest with her. She could already tell he was not the type to lie, though a part of her felt like there was much more to learn. Despite being so friendly, the boy sitting at the table, sharing breakfast with her, was still very much a mystery she aimed to solve. Naruto-kun, Riss started, making the blonde look up from his plate. Would you mind doing me a favor, eh? Sure. Naruto shrugged, as if to say it was no problem. What do you need me to do after school today? I need you to grab Issei and bring him to the Occult Research Club room. Riss told him. I think it's time I introduce him to the rest of my peerage and explain his situation to him. Also, there are some things I need to inform you and him on that comes with being a newly minted devil. Like those contracts things you mentioned last night, asked Naruto. Yes. Riss smiled at him. So will you do it? Of course. Naruto's bright grin came full force. He gave the redhead a thumbs up. It was kind of corny, but also seemed like a very Naruto-ish thing to do. Don't you worry, Riss. I'll bring the perv to the club room after school today. Issei groaned as the last day of class ended. Nothing seemed to be going right for the young pervert whose only real desire was to see a pair of real-life breasts. This entire week has been one big mess of confusion and anxiety. It all started with that beating he and his 2 friends had received at the hands of the Kendo Club, followed by being stabbed by his apparently non-existent ex-girlfriend and culminating in getting stabbed once more by a person who had black angel wings just like Yuma did. Honestly, with all the bad things going down in his life, it almost felt like someone was out to get him. Maybe God was trying to smite him for being so perverted? Nah, that couldn't be it. It was the day after that last attack, and he had no clue as to what was going on. This morning, he had woken up in his bed, The wound on his chest completely healed as if it had never happened, and he was feeling inexplicably tired for some reason, not to mention confused and worried. Issei couldn't help but feel like he was slowly going insane. Not even the thought of peeping on the girls at school while they were in the locker room was enough to help him out of his worry, which really just drove the point home that Issei, a male known for his incredible lust, was too worried to even peek at girls when they were changing. Well, then you just knew there was something wrong. Muttered whispers broke out around the classroom, but Issei ignored them and his friends' inane chatter about the girls they would be peeping on soon. He was too tired to care right now. "Oh, loud, brash voice sounded out. Ero Debugame." Issei looked up at the sound of the voice, his curiosity getting the better of him. To see the same blonde he had been so sure would have remembered Yuma standing in front of him with a bright grin on his face. For some reason, that grin made Issei really want to punch him. "Ah, you talking to me?" he asked uncertainty. "Who else would I be talking to?" the blonde asked rhetorically. "Rias wants to talk to you, so I'm here to escort you to see her. Now pack your crap and let's go." Issei stared at the boy in confusion. Rias, as in Rias Gremory, one of the two great ladies of Kuo Academy, wanted to talk to him? Why? Issei groaned as the last day of class ended. Nothing seemed to be going right for the young pervert whose only real desire was to see a pair of real-life breasts. This entire week has been one big mess of confusion and anxiety. It all started with that beating he and his two friends had received at the hands of the Kendo Club, followed by being stabbed by his apparently non-existent ex-girlfriend, and culminating in getting stabbed once more by a person who had black angel wings just like Yuma did. Honestly, with all the bad things going down in his life, it almost felt like someone was out to get him. Maybe God was trying to smite him for being so perverted? Nah, that couldn't be it. It was the day after that last attack, and he had no clue as to what was going on. This morning, he had woken up in his bed, the wound on his chest completely healed as if it had never happened, and he was feeling inexplicably tired for some reason, not to mention confused and worried. Issei couldn't help but feel like he was slowly going insane. Not even the thought of peeping on the girls at school while they were in the locker room was enough to help him out of his worry, which really just drove the point home that Issei, a male known for his incredible lust, was too worried to even peek at girls when they were changing. Well, then you just knew there was something wrong. Muttered whispers broke out around the classroom, but Issei ignored them and his friends' inane chatter about the girls they would be peeping on soon. He was too tired to care right now. "Oh, loud, brash voice sounded out. Ero Debugame." Issei looked up at the sound of the voice, his curiosity getting the better of him. To see the same blonde he had been so sure would have remembered Yuma standing in front of him with a bright grin on his face. For some reason, that grin made Issei really want to punch him. "Ah, you talking to me?" he asked uncertainty. "Who else would I be talking to?" the blonde asked rhetorically. "Rias wants to talk to you, so I'm here to escort you to see her. Now pack your crap and let's go." Issei stared at the boy in confusion. Rias, as in Rias Gremory, one of the two great ladies of Kuo Academy, wanted to talk to him? Why? Naruto walked into the occult research club room with a confused Issei following behind him. All of the members were already there. Rias was standing with her arms crossed under her impressive bust while Akino stood behind her, hands clasped together in front of her, which had the effect of pushing that monstrously large chest together in a very appealing way. Leaning against the wall to his right was Kiba, and sitting on the couch, munching on some manju, was Kaneko. "Ohio Miina." Naruto started cheerfully as he walked in and sat down next to Kaneko, trailing in after him, looking both unsure of himself and incredibly aroused as he stared at the trio of beautiful girls he now found himself in the presence of. Issei took a seat in one of the empty easy chairs. Ara. Akino sounded incredibly amused by the young blonde teen's greeting. "Good afternoon, Kitsune-kun." "Kitsune?" Naruto tilted his head inquisitively. "Whisker marks," Kaneko commented as she set her food down on the table and crawled over to the blonde. "Ah," Naruto murmured as he absently rubbed a finger down one of the whisker-like markings on his face. During that time, Kaneko sat herself down on his lap and looked up at him imploringly. Naruto got the hint and grinned as he raised a hand and began to gently run his fingers along her scalp. Kaneko sighed happily as she once more experienced bliss, wanting to get more of that incredible feeling. The first year curled herself against Naruto and began rubbing her face against his chest. That just made him even more amused and he couldn't help but indulge the girl a little more. Definitely a cat. A little ways away, Issei looked like he was trying to decide whether he wanted to strangle the blonde for what he was doing or worship him for that same damn reason. To think, this boy, no, this man, was capable of getting such a cute little kohai to enjoy sitting on his lap. It was both awe-inspiring and incredibly depressing for the perverted student who would like nothing more than for a girl to sit on his lap and rub her face against his chest like that. Ara. Akino giggled at the sight of the normally stoic girl turning into a puddle from the blonde simple head petting. She really has taken a liking to our Kitsune-kun, hasn't she, Bachao? Akino looked over at her best friend and king, and promptly felt a bead of seat trickle down the side of her forehead when she saw Ria staring disapprovingly at Naruto as he pampered the 15-year-old, silver-haired first year. Ara. Being Akino, however, she recovered from her surprise very quickly. Is someone feeling a bit jealous of Kaneko-chan, asked Akino, causing Rias to finally turn her head from the scene to face her queen, the frown growing even more prominent. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't, was Akino's sly reply. Yufu. Rias ignored her best friend's demure giggling and cleared her throat quite loudly. Everyone looked over at her. Well, almost everyone. Kaneko was still in paradise as Naruto's hands were now in the process of carefully rubbing along her ears, which had the girl emitting an audible purr that rumbled from deep within her chest. Ria's eyes twitched. Well, she stated, doing her best to ignore Kaneko. She wasn't angry or jealous. No sir, she just didn't like being ignored. Now that you're here, Issei, I would like to welcome you to the Occult Research Club. No. Issei rubbed the back of his head as he tried to think of what to say in this situation. It wouldn't be so hard if all the girls around him weren't so beautiful. He was having trouble just figuring out which pair of breasts to look at. Ria-senpai was so perky, yet Akino-senpai seemed to have the biggest bust. And there was something to be said for Kaneko's cute little boobs too. They were so cute. Thank you for having me. I'll be in your care. Ria smiled. Or tried to smile. She didn't quite succeed, so she eventually gave up, deciding to give it up as a lost cause. She continued speaking. As you know, I am Rias Gremory. The one behind me is Imejima Akino. The person leaning against the wall is Yuto Kiba. And the two people, her eyebrow twitched again, sitting on the couch are Taojo Kaneko and Uzumaki Naruto. We, that is to say, all 5 of us, are devils. As the silence stretched on, with only the sound of Kaneko's purring to accompany the chirping of crickets, Issei could only sit there, blinking stupidly as he tried to come to grips with what he had just been told. He scratched the back of his head. Could you repeat that? I could have sworn you just said you guys were devils. We are, Rias confirmed. To further emphasize her point, she, Akino, Kiba and Naruto all sprouted black devil wings from their backs. Kaneko would have done so as well, but, well, she was still in happy land. Issei could only stare at the wings coming from behind everyone else in shock. Wait, he pointed at them, yelling his head off in surprise. So you guys really are devils? I don't see why you're so surprised, said Naruto, smiling down at the girl on his lap. She really was just too adorable for her own good. You're a devil too. After all, how that comment threw Issei for a loop. Him? A devil? What nonsense was this? Wouldn't he know if he was a devil or not? Shouldn't there be some kind of sign or something? Aside from an irritating rash on his skin that he got a while ago, he did not feel any different, and he didn't have any desire to go out and sacrifice puppies or something. Just look at your back, Rias suggested. You have wings just like the rest of us. I do. Issei's question was answered by the sound of cloth tearing. Looking behind him, the boy found himself in shock to see that he really did have wings sprouting from his back. Black devil wings that reminded him of bats, much like the ones everyone else was sporting. This just seemed to depress him. I really am a devil, the boy nearly wailed as he crumbled to his knees. As he pressed his hands against the floor to keep himself from falling, all those present watched as a small, grey rain cloud appeared over the second-year student's head and began sprinkling him in a light drizzle. Cue massive sweet drop. Anyways, Rias cleared her throat and tried to ignore the boy who was getting her floor wet with that strange rain cloud. Just where had it come from anyways? Some kind of strange devil power that she did not know of? I reincarnated you as a devil and my servant after you were killed by a fallen angel a few days ago and, The girl trailed off uncertainty as the boy continued looking like a despondent young man who had just been dumped by his ex-girlfriend, or stabbed through the chest with a light spear by his ex-girlfriend. Are you even listening to me, number? No, he wasn't. Issei was currently in the middle of a midlife, or is that young life, crises. He had just been told he was a devil and he had wings on his back, and this was on top of everything else that had happened this week. Not only that, but he still had yet to see a pair of real life boobs. It was official. He really was going insane. Naruto sighed as he watched the depressed kid get soaked to the bone by that strange cloud of rain, deciding that he should do something about this. Because seeing the normally carefree if incredibly perverted second year have a look of someone who had just had his puppy killed was pathetic. He carefully set Kaneko down and stood up. He didn't get to move very far as the white-haired girl in question grabbed his sleeve. The blonde looked down at the girl, who was giving him a large puppy dog, or would that be a kitten? Eyes that nearly had him bending down and scooping her back into his arms. Was this how most women felt when dealing with cute things? God, he hoped not. Naruto didn't want to become a woman. He was perfectly happy being a man. Thank you very much. Don't worry, he told Kaneko as he patted her head. I'll be right back. You. Okay, Kaneko mumbled. She looked up at him with her big, amber-colored eyes. But come back soon. Gah, that look should be illegal. Naruto was almost overwhelmed by the cuteness. Don't worry, I won't be more than a few seconds. Kaneko finally let go of his shirt sleeve, and Naruto turned to look at Rias, who was looking very unsure of what to do. Not that he blamed her. Rias, he got her attention. Do you mind if he gestured over to the still despondent Issei. Not at all. Rias looked relieved. She really didn't know what to do in this situation. Most people went through shock when they realized they had been turned into a devil, but she had never seen someone look so depressed before. And her floor was now soaking wet from that rain cloud. Thanks. Naruto flashed her a quick grin before turning around and walking over to Issei. Without pause or hesitation, the blonde grabbed the boy by the back of his collar, hauling him to his feet, and began dragging him along as he walked towards the door. What do you think you're doing? Don't worry, I just have to explain a few things. I think you'll appreciate what I have to tell you. Naruto's voice faded into the distance as he left the room and walked down the hall. So, what do you think Naruto-san wanted to tell Issei? Asked Kiba, finally deciding to speak up for the first time since they got to the club room. Who knows? Ria said, shrugging her shoulders helplessly as she gave an "I'm just as clueless as you look. I just hope that whatever it is, it gets Issei to stop moping. She didn't think her carpet could take much more water damage. I want more head petting." Everyone sweet dropped as Kaneko spoke in the monotone voice she was so well known for. It was even stranger because of what she was talking about. Ara. Everyone except for Akino, that is, who really just looked amused by the girl's unusual antics. A few minutes after they left, Issei came running into the room, a fire in his eyes. He went straight towards a stunned Rias, who almost took a step back when the perverted male got right in her face. Is it true that if I get strong enough I can have a harem? Rias was at a loss for words. Just what did Naruto tell this boy? I guess, if you get strong enough, you can eventually be considered a high-class devil and have your own peerage, which can be like a harem. Sort of. She trailed off when she saw Issei's face light up even more. The young man grinned, his eyes burning with unyouthful, as Gay would say, fire as his hands clenched into fists. Yeah, the shout was so startling and loud that Riz took a step back. I want to be a devil. Now I can throw away all of my porno mags, he shouted without shame. Then he crouched down, a look of utter defeat on his face, his index finger drawing circles on the floor. No, I can't do that. Those are my treasures. There's no way I could give them up just because I have a harem. Porn and sex are two different things. When you said we might have an idiotic little brother join our peerage, I hadn't realized he would be so enthusiastic. Akino tried to find the right word to describe the boy. Well, enthusiastic was certainly an accurate description of Issei, though lecherous would have worked much better. He's certainly unique. Rias tried to be diplomatic. Failing that, she turned her head to look at Naruto as he sat back down again and was immediately glomped on by Kaneko. "What did you say to him?" "I just explained one of the many perks he could get if he works really hard at being a good devil," Naruto explained with an amused grin as he went back to pampering his cute little Kohachi. Being a male, and one who is used to dealing with people like him, I knew how to explain his situation in a way that would help him get over his issues quickly. Right. Rias looked over at the now fired up Issei and wondered if using his perverseness to make him get over being a devil was the best move. Probably not. Well, if nothing else, at least the boy would now be receptive to her teachings. That is, if he could concentrate long enough to actually learn anything. Our race has two enemies. Once Issei had calmed down from his harem high, Rias began to teach the boy some of the basic information he would need to know for his new life as a devil. Angels and fallen angels. Fallen angels are angels that have fallen from grace, signified by their black wings. They are angels who were cast out of heaven and sent to hell due to their wicked nature and impure thoughts. Naruto, who already knew most of this information was being shared to the other boy, didn't pay as much attention to the lecture. Instead, he was focusing his time on the girl who had curled up in his lap. He did keep an ear out, though, just in case Rias said something she hadn't mentioned yesterday. Devils want to retain control of hell while the fallen angels are trying to take it over. We have been battling the fallen angels ever since. Issei scratched the back of his head. He looked very confused. We devils make pacts with humans for a price in order to obtain power via their desires, whereas the fallen angels take control of humans and use them to destroy devils. Moreover, Rias continued, heedless of the blank look on Issei's face. God has tasked many angels with the goal of destroying both the fallen angels and us devils, making the situation a three-way standoff. It's been like this for a long time now. That was the gist of everything, though not absolutely everything. These were just the bare bones basic facts. Rias didn't want to bombard Issei with too much information right now. Going into a more detailed lecture about the history of the three factions would probably take several months to learn. What she told him now should be enough for him to understand his situation. "Do you understand everything I just told you?" Naruto watched with an amused look on his face as Issei began scratching at his cheek, his confusion more than evident. Not really. All this stuff about devils and angels and fallen angels is really too complicated for a normal high school student like me. Everyone looked at Issei with a massive bead of sweat that literally looked like a drop of water forming on the side of their heads, Naruto especially. He might not be the sharpest Kyuubi in the set, but even Naruto was not that stupid. He could understand things so long as they weren't explained in an overly complicated way. Granted, he probably wouldn't have been able to make sense of Rias' lecture when he was 12, but that would have been more due to a lack of caring than anything else. He hated listening to lectures. Even Kaneko was now staring at Issei like he was some kind of idiot, which he kind of was, though Naruto was being hypocritical in his thoughts. Wait. Kaneko was actually glaring at him because his inability to understand his situation had caused Naruto to stop petting her. Never mind. What about this girl? Rias decided to try a different approach and handed Issei a photograph she had grabbed from off the desk. Issei took the photo from her and looked at it. "Yuma-chan," he said in shock. Staring him in the face from within the confines of the photo was none other than the girl who tried to kill him, and succeeded. "Where did you get this?" "That's the girl that almost killed you and Naruto-kun," Rias told him. "She's actually a fallen angel. But then, this means she really does exist." "Yes." Rias nodded. "She really exists. I suspect she erased herself from everyone's minds to keep from being discovered. But then wait." Issei suddenly paused as he realized something. "If you know about Yuma-chan, then that means..." He looked over at Naruto, who had gone back to petting a newly blissed out Kaneko, stood up and pointed an accusing finger at the blonde ass that he felt insanely jealous of. "You knew about Yuma-chan all along. Didn't you? Took you long enough to figure it out." Naruto smirked. "Why did you tell me you didn't know her then?" asked an angry and somewhat distraught Issei. "Because I thought it would be funny." The answer he received actually caused Issei to fault, his face smacking into the ground. The lecherous high school student groaned at his misfortune. He lifted his head a few seconds later to look at a slightly unsure Rias. "So wait, you said you had reincarnated me as a devil after she killed me, right?" Rias nodded. still looking a bit concerned by how Issei was acting. Then why did she try to kill me in the first place? I mean, I've never been involved in any of this devil and fallen angel stuff before. So why me? I suspect it's because you have sacred gear, Rias explained as Issei stood back up. She looked very relieved to finally be getting down to one of the main topics she wanted to bring up. Just how things had taken so long to get to this point was beyond her. Sacred gear. Issei frowned, his head lowering and his brows furrowed as he adopted a thoughtful pose. I could have sworn I've heard that before. Akino decided to pick up some of the slack here and began explaining what a sacred gear was to Issei. Sacred gears are basically artifacts given to humans by the original god from the Bible to enact miracles on Earth. Only humans or human hybrids are born with sacred gears, though they can show up within the ranks of devils and angels if the human possessing the sacred gear is turned. Issei, Rias got the boy's attention as she pointed at him. You have one of those sacred gears within you. A very powerful one if I'm not mistaken, which is the reason that fallen angel tried to kill you. Most likely, she was ordered to by the higher-ups who feared whatever sacred gear you possess. Issei stared at the red-haired beauty for several long, silent moments, right before he exploded and took her words in an entirely wrong way. The lecturer's second year grabbed his crotch, which he was almost positive the girl was pointing to. She wasn't, but he thought she was. I know I'm a super healthy and viral guy, but are you telling me that my penis is actually a super famous tool nicknamed the sacred gear within his mind? Issei conjured up an image of various women coming to claim his sacred gear for themselves. He saw them seeking it out, fighting over it, killing over it. Wars started simply because all the women in the world wanted his famous sacred gear. It would have been nice to see so many beautiful ladies fighting over his sacred gear, but if a war got started over him, then wouldn't his life be in jeopardy? Who knows how many women would fight over him and try to claim him for themselves? What if he ended up getting caught in the crossfire of one of those wars and was accidentally killed? What then? As Issei's mind began taking a most unusual and lecherous turn, the others in the room watched the perverted boy's mind run rampant. No, really. There was actually a large viewing bubble that appeared over Issei's head and was showing his thoughts to all of them like it was some kind of movie. Needless to say, the sweat dripping would not be stopping anytime soon. After the incident where everyone got an unwilling glimpse inside of Issei's mind, the group of devils collectively agreed to forget about the incident altogether. No one felt safe thinking about what they saw. The perversion that the newest member of the peerage possessed. Yes, it was much better to just pretend the whole viewing bubble thing never happened. Safer for their sanity that way too. Anyways, Issei, we're going to try to bring out your sacred gear, Rias continued. This was, of course, after she had managed to convince the boy that, no, they were not talking about his penis. It took a lot longer to convince him that his phallus was not a sacred gear than it should have, but really, what else could they have expected when dealing with a boy known for his lecherousness throughout the school? I want you to close your eyes and take a stance that makes you feel empowered. A stance that makes me feel empowered, the boy parroted, looking a little lost. He was now standing as opposed to sitting, mainly because Riss had prompted him to stand, and who was he to deny a beautiful girl what she wanted? Still, that didn't make him any less confused by her words. What did she mean to take a stance? Was she talking about Sentai poses or something? Like Kamen Rider? Naruto watched in amusement as the boy bent his legs and put his hands together like he was holding something in them. It was obvious the blonde-haired Uzumaki was enjoying himself. And why wouldn't he? Issei looked absolutely ridiculous. This is the dragon wave from my favorite manga, Doroku Sapporo. It was such a strange pose that Riss could not help but feel a small drop of sweat trickle down the side of her face. Really, what exactly was this boy doing? Did he expect the sacred gear would manifest as some kind of powerful energy blast that would annihilate everything in its path? Don't you mean the Kamehameha wave from Dragon Ball Z? Asked Naruto, butting into the moment. No, Issei retorted with a scowl. I'm not talking about the sellout of an anime. Doroku Sapporo is way better than Dragon Ball Z, though I will admit it was pretty good until after the Cell Saga. If DBZ's a sellout, then Doroku Sapporo is a copycat. They totally stole the dragon wave from Master Roshi's Kamehameha wave. Who asked you boys? Rias said with frizzled calm. No fighting. Naruto-kun. Just keep. A vein popped up on her head. She couldn't believe she was about to say this. Keep entertaining Kaneko-chan. Issei. Focus. Yes. Bunchao sure thing. Rias. Ara. Akino held a hand up to hide the amused smile on her face. Things really do seem to be getting interesting these days. She gave a demure giggle. These two are most definitely unique individuals. Kiba chuckled. That's a bit of an understatement. From what I've seen, nothing's going to be boring with these two around. Ria sighed as she listened to the conversation of her peerage and began instructing Issei on how to properly activate his sacred gear. Meanwhile, Naruto focused on the cutie sitting on his lap. This would come as a surprise to most people, but this wasn't the first time he'd had a girl sitting on his lap, or even the 100th time. Of course, that sounded a lot more explicit than it actually was. The last time a girl sat on his lap had been when he was telling the children in Konoha a story about his past exploits, pranks, during the rebuilding process after Nagato destroyed the village. That time it had simply been the harmless act of a child wanting to be close to her hero as he shared his past with her and the other children. What was happening here was a bit different. Kaneko had all the cuteness and adorableness one would expect of a kid, i.e., her loli-like face, yet possessed the sensual body of a budding teenage girl. She may have been much more petite than Rias or Akino, but that didn't mean she didn't have breasts or amazing hips. And dear God, she had the tightest little butt he had ever felt. This did cause a number of problems, as well as one problem that could become a serious issue if he let it grow. Thankfully, Naruto had experience when it came to keeping himself calm while in the presence of beautiful girls. You don't become the apprentice of Jiraiya and not get desensitized to things like nudity and sexual acts happening to and or around you. Naruto had 3 years of dealing with women who worked at whorehouses, taverns, and brothels. While most people never realized it, the blonde had actually grown very used to nudity during that time and had never been bothered when seeing it in front of him. It probably helps that he had created Orochi-chan, his female form when under henge, when he was younger, which required a lot of knowledge about women's bodies. Not that he would ever tell anyone that. He wasn't going to let himself get beaten over something that happened a long time ago. No way, no how. A sudden spike in energy had Naruto's head snapping over towards Issei. It was strange, but ever since Rias healed his destroyed chakra coils, his sensing abilities had been much better than before. He wondered if it had something to do with his smaller coils no longer causing his own chakra to fluctuate so wildly. Naturally, as soon as he began wondering about that he stopped. Thinking about chakra theory gave him a headache. That was why he left the theory to Sakura. Looking at Issei, Naruto had to raise an eyebrow when he saw the thing that had appeared on his arm. It looked like a red, armored bracer with yellow accents and a green jewel on top of the back of Issei's hand. His fingers were uncovered, making it look like some kind of high-tech disc shooter or something. That's your sacred gear, Rias said with a satisfied smile. She was quite proud of her pawn's accomplishment, despite the fact that activating his sacred gear really wasn't much of one. That didn't matter when dealing with someone of Issei's stature. In moments like this, Rias would take even the most minor of accomplishments with great satisfaction. Amazing, Issei marveled at his bracer-covered hand. This looks awesome, Naruto had to agree. It did look kind of cool. It would have been better if it was orange, but since it was red, he wouldn't complain too much. That fallen angel, Yuma, thought that your sacred gear posed a threat, which is why she killed you. But wait, Issei looked over at Rias. I'm still alive. So how, just as you were about to take your last breath, you summoned me? Rias answered before he could finish his question. Akino, give Issei a simplified pentagram. Akino handed Issei a sheet of paper. On it was a circle, a pentagram. It looked very complicated, with a lot of strange characters and symbols that Issei couldn't make heads or tails of. Still, it did look kind of familiar. I told you before that a devil requires a signed contract in order to utilize a human's power. Rias lectured as Issei stared at the pentagram. Naruto also listened from where he sat, but didn't move. Or to be more accurate, he couldn't move. Kaneko was still purring in his lap. With this, humans can summon devils, after which they forge an agreement based on the fulfillment of a human's wish, taking power equivalent to the wish they grant. Even Naruto, who wasn't actually as stupid as he sometimes acted, thought the whole thing was needlessly complicated. He got the basics of it, Devils make a contract and grant a human their wish and in return a given power. It was sort of like how summoning creatures required something from those who summoned them. Toads required subservience to a degree and snakes required sacrifices. In return, they would aid you in battle. Still, learning the more intricate details of something had never been Naruto's strong point. It didn't help that he had a very short attention span. In recent times, humans who can draw this kind of pentagram have become very rare, almost non-existent. That's why we were giving out simplified pentagrams to people with strong desires. Both Issei and Naruto looked at Rias. Issei, you happened to be on the street that day, where you received one from one of our familiars passing out the forms. Issei scrunched his face up as he tried to remember that moment. It took some effort, but he eventually remembered receiving the sheet of paper from a cute girl when he was waiting for Yuma to meet him for their date. Of course, remembering that moment also made him remember Yuma stabbing him in the stomach. Needless to say, Issei could not help but feel a bit depressed. Rias continued on, either unaware or ignoring Issei's increasing depression. She placed the back of her fingers against her cheek and offered the lecherous pervert a coy look. In your dying moment, your wish was to at least die in the arms of a beautiful girl. When I was summoned, I discovered that you had a sacred gear, so I saved your life. Issei nodded his head to everything he was being told. It made sense to him. Sort of. He didn't really get a lot of what they were telling him, but he understood the basics. He had been killed. Rias saved him by turning him into a devil, and if he wanted to become a harem king he would need to grow stronger. And really, that last part was all he needed to know. Yes, not even being a devil meant anything to him so long as he could get his harem. He was perverted like that. Despite not being the kind of person who enjoyed learning new things, Naruto did find himself strangely fascinated when Rias began explaining the devil hierarchy. There were apparently 4 different classes of devils: lower, middle, upper and elite class, otherwise known as the ultimate class. The lower class devils were the ones like him, Issei, and the other members of Rias' peerage, humans and hybrids who were reincarnated as devils. Essentially, all new devils were of the lower class. The middle class was where devils finally gained recognition and were given the titles of either Baronet, Baroness or Knight Dame. After that was the upper class, where devils could be given titles such as Marquis, Margrave, Margravine, Count, Countess, Viscount, Viscountess, or Baron, Baroness. And finally, there was the elite or ultimate class. This was the highest level one could ascend to among the devil hierarchy, with titles consisting of Demon Lord, Great King, Archduke, Duke and Prince Princess. Naruto really didn't care much for the titles, or for gaining nobility. He had seen what most nobles were like. The Hyuga had been a bunch of stuck-up pricks with their heads shoved so far up their ass it was a wonder they could smell those incredibly fragrant gardens that littered their ridiculously large and expensive residence. No way in hell Naruto wanted to be like those guys. Though, thinking on it, wasn't Rias a part of the nobility? She was a really awesome person from what he had seen so far. He enjoyed spending time with her, and she couldn't be the only one among the nobility who wasn't a stuck-up snob, right? Well, whatever. Being a noble still didn't interest him. However, he did manage to pick up something from all this. Those who were considered ultimate class devils were supposed to be the strongest rank among their species. He supposed it was similar to an S-rank ninja, which were supposed to be ninja who had skills on par with a kage but weren't actually cages. Like the Sannin or members of the Akatsuki, they were recognized as the best and strongest amongst their peers. In other words, they were the ultimate badasses. And so, Naruto finally found himself with a new goal in life. He would become an ultimate class devil. No, he would become the strongest ultimate class devil, the undisputed most powerful devil in the entire world. Yes, that was his new goal. Too ambitious? Remember, this was the kid who, at the tender age of 8, decided he was going to become Hokage. Uzumaki Naruto never does anything half-assed. It was all or nothing with this guy. So if I become a noble, having a harem will no longer be a mere dream and, of course, there was also that guy. Naruto sighed and shook his head at Issei's words. The boy had a one-track mind when it came to life. Harem this, harem that, harem king. It was a wonder the boy had any thoughts in his head other than harem. Truly, this boy must be Ero Sennin's reincarnation or something. That was the only logical explanation for how there could possibly be someone so perverted in this world. That's right. Rias smiled at the pair. I expect you two to work hard from now on. Yes. Buncha, you've got it. Rias. Good. And for your first task, Rias showed them a flyer with a pentagram on it. You two are going to be handing out these flyers. Issei felt like crying as he stood on the sidewalk, trying to hand out flyers to people. He knew he shouldn't be taking this so hard, but he just couldn't see how handing out flyers to people would help him gain a harem. Who ever heard of a harem king handing out flyers? Clearly, this boy never heard the term baby steps before. Cheer up, Erodeba Game, Naruto said cheerfully as he handed out another flyer to someone, who smiled at him as they took it. Unlike Issei, who seemed to be having very little luck in handing out flyers, the blonde was very good at sensing people who had strong desires. It was strange, while Naruto had been good at sensing negative emotions before thanks to Kurama, he had never been able to sense people's emotional state beyond that. Was this a part of being a devil? It did sound kind of like something they would be able to do. Well, whatever. He didn't care for semantics. The point was he could, and that was all that mattered to him. Easy for you to say. Issei felt his jealousy spike as the blonde managed to get another cute girl to take one of his flyers with a smile. How was he doing that? You're not having any problems handing out flyers. That's because I'm just that awesome. Naruto replied with a bright smile. Issei felt like punching his fellow reincarnated devil's face in. Anyways, the reason none of those people are taking your flyer is because they don't have any desires. At least, none that would be enough for them to take a flyer from a strange kid passing them out. I'm not strange. Issei pouted a bit before an uncertain look came to his face. Am I? Naruto laughed before finding another target, a female with brown hair and doe-like eyes, and handed her a flyer. There sure were a lot of women who had strong desires. He wondered why that was. Then again, most women seemed to have more wants than men. Males were easy with their desires. It usually consisted of a few things: food, money, alcohol, and sex. Guys were just uncomplicated like that. Girls on the other hand seemed to have a lot more things they wanted, and some of that stuff was hard to get, like new expensive clothing and jewelry. Did that mean he would have to get girls some jewelry? He hoped not. His bank account didn't have enough to afford stuff like that, though he could always steal it, he supposed. Shaking his head, Naruto returned to the here and now. Anyways, the reason you're not doing so well is because you're just trying to hand out flyers willy-nilly. You need to find someone who has really strong desires, strong enough that they will take a flyer from someone they don't know. How do I do that? Issei was looking very awkward and confused by Naruto's words. Just how did you tell if someone had strong desires? Were they supposed to look or act differently than everyone else or something? You're a devil, aren't you? Naruto asked rhetorically. Another female passed him and he handed her a flyer with a smile. You should be able to feel out people who have strong desires. Issei frowned as he tried to feel out people with strong desires. Unfortunately, this led to him getting slapped when he ended up staring at a girl for so long that his natural propensity for perversity had him looking at her breasts. Ugh. It's useless. Naruto chuckled as he handed out another flyer. You know, if you keep sucking this bad, I'm going to hand out all these flyers before you hand out even one. I hate you. Issei grumbled as he glared at Naruto, who just smiled back. I bask in your hate.